to tie Cruz and Hawley and Trump into that count, saying you tried to delay the execution of the transfer of power. The answer to that, as I discussed on another program, is what he did, or what Cruz and Hawley did, and what the president wanted was not illegal. If there was impropriety in an election, they had the right to do that, and he did. And
how is that any different from Al Gore and Hillary Clinton? My question is the same thing. They did it lawfully too. They didn't win, but they did it the right way. I'll give them credit, and they were just as long, if not longer.
Well, even better than that, what Cruz and Hawley did and what Trump wanted was done in the public, in open, saying no, we need to check the election results. Versus what Clinton has done is going behind his back, and what the Democrats did in the FBI and other things, lying to get subpoenas to go after a president, and for 3 years trying to impeach him for this hoax of a Russian conspiracy, which was an absolute
which was proven not to be true. And also, I know from what I've heard that they did a forensic investigation, I believe it was in Arizona, of I forget how many mail-in ballots, which never had a fold in them. And since they were sent out in number 10 envelopes, for anybody who knows that's the ones that are about 11 inches by 4 inches high, it's kind of hard to send an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper out without putting folds in it. And to me, that tells you everything you need to know there.
So I'm with you. There's some of this. Now, let me mention one other thing. I mentioned the January 6th commission because it continues to go on, and people need to know it is an attempt to get at Cruz and other supporters of Trump. One reason I support Trump is because he has espoused many of the things that I believe in, and he has been attacked because of some of his positions, not just because he's rude sometimes, which he is. And so when you attack some of the positions he's for, you're attacking a lot of Americans. And in this case, there were more people that voted for Trump. I think he had 11 million more votes than the 4 years previous. So he had actually increased his popularity, but there was a lot of voter support for whoever opposed Trump, which of course was Biden.
Well, I'll just make one statement. For people who get upset with rudeness, I will tell you this. Rudeness doesn't affect me. Corruption does.
Corruption is much worse.
And some people are realizing that now. And Trump, even if he'd have won a second term, you've got to understand, was an outsider. He would have been in office for a maximum of 8 years. We've got too many politicians on both sides of the spectrum that have been career politicians, and they are the insiders. They want to keep going to the Georgetown parties and all those things. They have a vested interest in not having anybody. Trump, because of his wealth, couldn't be influenced. I mean, you look at a lot of our
couldn't be bought.
people.
Yeah.
You look at the Obamas. The Obamas came in with literally nothing. They just bought another mansion somewhere. It's amazing how wealthy these people can get on 4 years at $400,000 a piece. The numbers are staggering. I wish I could do the math for that with my own assets.
Well, they've got,
as well as the Clintons. The Clintons came in, they didn't have anything either. And there was a big survey out in front of the White House, which I think is funny. They showed all these houses back into primaries and asked people to identify which Republican candidate in the primaries were on the houses. And afterwards, they showed that all 10 of those houses belonged to Hillary Clinton.
I just want to mention two other things in wrapping this up. One, I wanted to talk about prosecution of the protesters. I frankly am glad they are prosecuting protesters who broke in. That actually hurt me. It hurt Trump. Trump was not interested in it going this way.
It hurt our side.
And frankly, I would regard him as a little bit reckless in how he handled things. I was watching this. I wasn't sure what his strategy was at that time. And some people ran and did terrible things, but I want to prosecute the people. However, the prosecution for trespass, people are getting convicted for the maximum on these things. Some of them have been held without counsel. They've been held without bail. There have been a number of mistreatments. This appears to be a kangaroo court. It appears to be political retribution that is happening to these people. And I'm not happy with it. It's not right. I want them to get what's rightfully theirs, punishment if they, went into the Capitol, but some of the punishment is excessive right now.
Well, I think it's excessive because when you compare that to what happened in the cities where people came in and tore things down and they could care less about that. They damaged more property and people's personal belongings and businesses, and nothing was done there.
So you've got the people in power who like those demonstrations, but they don't like the one at the Capitol.
Well, that's what happens when you're in countries where you have dictators. I mean,
all right.
A lot of stuff Putin didn't care about, but you don't mess with him.
Okay, one other thing I just want to mention. One interesting development in 2021, it's about a year ago in Georgia. Again, Georgia was the site of some voting irregularities, according to Trump, and Georgia proceeded to change some of its voting laws. The principal change was they enacted a law that requires photo ID if you're voting by absentee ballot. The reason for this is to ensure that there is not fraud and to make sure that the right person is voting. The Democrats characterize this as being designed to disenfranchise voters of color. This is an absolute lie. President Biden called the law Jim Crow on steroids, an absolute despicable lie. Well, it worked though. They pulled the All-Star game out of Atlanta and sent it somewhere else. And then Governor Kemp at the time, he says, what are you going to do? What if the Braves go to the World Series? Are you going to keep the World Series game out of Atlanta? Well, I'll be danged. Braves went to the World Series.
Yeah.
By that time, everybody had recognized, we really kind of blew it. There was no evidence, and the World Series games were played in Atlanta. But that is just an additional event here. Well, do you have any other thoughts about the January 6th protest? Well, one other thing we ought to discuss. How do you characterize it? Do you call it the January 6th insurrection?
No. Like I said before, an insurrection, just by the word insurrection, look it up what it means. It means there's got to be property damage. There's got to be at least people hurt, wounded, all sorts of things happening. This was about as peaceful a protest for a number of people there. There's been more injuries done at a 4th of July fireworks show down at the Washington Monument on the mall when the people get moving around and with the fireworks. This was a very peaceful thing, just like the previous one. I can't remember the name for when everybody came into town. They cleaned up all their trash and all that. This is what bothers me about Democrats. They love to change the language.
Well, insurrection implies trying to take over, like sedition, exactly, trying to take over power. But that aspect of it did not happen.
Of course it did.
It was clearly a protest. It was a riot in a sense. It was a strange riot because nobody had any weapons. Actually, on April 1, an individual was convicted of bringing weapons into the Capitol. That is this year. And I, until yesterday, I had not heard of that. So that just happened. But for the most part, the people were there without weapons, and they were just, milling around. There's evidence that FBI was present in abundance. There's evidence that the Capitol Police were being hospitable and inviting the people around. Yep. So it's just not an insurrection. So you could be called a riot or a protest, but insurrection is absolutely the wrong term.
Call it a peaceful protest. In this country, we welcome peaceful protests. We welcome them.
Well, I hope that's helpful today. That doesn't answer all the questions. As you and I discussed before this program, we wanted just to put on the record there are people who are pretty intelligent that watch what's going on and are very upset at how some of the events of January 6th are mischaracterized, made to make conservatives look evil and unpatriotic, and that's just not true. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. The liberties we enjoy in America can be maintained only by its citizens being moral and informed participants in the democratic processes. The closing argument will help us do this. I've got several books on current political issues today. I invite you to visit my website to get a copy of some of those books. That's www.cpaulsmith.com. Till we meet again. See you then.